take two because the first time didn't have any audio. Anyway, here I am again, trying to get my first stream on. It's my first time. The first time I recorded this wasn't such a good stream. It was short, and of course there was the glaring issue that there was no audio, and I didn't think I had very good takes. So this is a second chance to make amends. Anyway, still learning as I go, still new, but I'm gonna try my best to get some decent quality clips to export to YouTube, and hopefully this will be the beginning of something beautiful. So today I've got some dumb right-wing talking points by Dave Rubin, Michelle Bachmann, Alexandria OcasioCortez made a sweater. She priced it pretty high for a sweater, and so that drew some criticism from the hypocritical right, which saying that it's too expensive. Some protests continue in France. They flared up again. France is in the middle of some political turbulence, and some election fraud claims that don't seem entirely false, do seem shady on the surface level. But of course, once you take a dive in, the whole narrative about election fraud shatters. So here we have Dave Rubin. If lockdowns were working, then why aren't people fleeing red states to the sanctuary of blue states? I don't know. Could it be that people are unwilling to leave their homes in favor of another state because the COVID-19 pandemic was mismatched so poorly, and that people understand that a vaccine is coming soon that is going to end this pandemic, and that it's not worth moving over to a red state sanctuary? But anyway, let's watch and then discuss.
This is what you need to bring up when your crazy uncle or whoever is screaming at you about this stuff. We have some states like Florida in particular, Texas, red states that are opened up. They're much more opened up. People are doing what's responsible, whatever they feel is right for their lives. And then we have these states in severe lockdown like California. Now, why are the numbers not wildly out of control? If they are, please show me, but nobody seems to be able to show me, right? If this is to be true, if all of this is to be true, follow the science and all that, well, one state's opening up, they're letting people do what they want. People are eating out, they're talking to each other, they're singing during holidays. Well, shouldn't those numbers be exploding? Not just a little bit higher or just comparable, but shouldn't those numbers be exploding while these are going down? And then if that was the case, wouldn't people from red states, Florida and Texas, be fleeing? There's a mass outbreak of a disease that's killing everybody. We have no hospital beds or anything else. Wouldn't they be fleeing to the sanctuary of blue states? But, ironically, that's not happening. Obviously, you all know what's happening, which is that people in blue states are fleeing to go to red states to be freer and live their lives and save on taxes and everything else.
It's such a myopic take. He actually had the dignity to upload this. But it's a very shallow point. What would you expect? He's a grifter. If COVID-19 cases were exploding, where is that? I haven't seen any evidence that COVID is exploding. Cases, I misspelled that. I have. What did he say? What did he say?
This is what you need to bring up. They're letting people do what they want. People are eating. Well, shouldn't those numbers be exploding? Not just a little. Shouldn't those numbers be exploding? Not just a little bit. Well, shouldn't those numbers be exploding? Not just a little bit higher or just comparable, but shouldn't those numbers be
not just a little, not just comparable? Remember in March when we all had to shut down because COVID was gonna swamp over the United States, and it was a really, really bad scenario, and everybody was shut down. Everybody took social distancing seriously. COVID-19 isn't being taken seriously. 14.9 million cases in total. 170,000. The United States is breaking a record every single day, and if you look at it, sure, New York and California are very high, but look at look at central U.S. These all are mostly red states. You see, COVID-19 is going to target Democratic areas because Democratic areas are disproportionately dense, and viruses fester in disproportionately dense areas. A lot of this is, and he's also pretending that right-wing states aren't having a massive problem with lockdowns. people are just going about their business. It's going about their business that's causing problems. There was a clip on Twitter that went viral about a man saying that he had to shut down, but another big business that was in the same lot didn't. Deaths 100 just today, 1,111. Well, it's not actually. I presume this is yesterday's data, and then anyway, essentially getting a 9/11 every day. As far as cases go, we're breaking a new record every single day. Cases are exploding. And I love how he opens with the point about the politically involved uncle, as if that's not a Republican stereotype. That's a Republican stereotype. They're going off about election fraud. Thanksgiving isn't a story about giving. It's about how socialism failed. It was socialism that caused Thanksgiving, and we're thankful for. That's a right-wing stereotype. The crazy uncle at the dinner table at the holiday around holiday season. He's a Republican, and you know damn well if he did it at Thanksgiving, you know he's going to do it at Christmas. That right-wing uncle is going to be going off about at election fraud. Anyway, not a very surprising take from Dave Rubin. That's usually in line with what he gets, but hey, what do you get from the poor man who was now the whipping boy of conservative thought? So, Michelle Bachmann took to Twitter to ask God for Trump's second term and for Republicans to win. Here we go.
For this moment in the United States, we seriously, sincerely cry out to you, confessing our personal sins. We confess the sins of our country as proxies. We ask you, oh God, for deliverance, that our country may continue to know freedom. Lord, would you deliver these races in Georgia, oh Father? Would you deliver various local and state races, Father, that they aren't stolen? Would you give us a true vote? And oh God, I personally ask from myself, Michelle Bachmann, Lord, would you allow Donald Trump to have a second term as president of the United States? For this moment in
when I hear points that are so far removed from myself that I try to empathize with people who are thinking these things, and it's very difficult to do. Because imagine thinking that everything came from an all-powerful, all-knowing, omnipotent deity, and that of all the things in the permutive ooze of the universe, that deity chose to concern itself with the happenings of one political party, or I should say two political parties, in one country, in one planet, on one solar system, one galaxy, and potentially one universe. Most Americans aren't that involved in politics. So God is going to come in and save everything. But imagine, put the political involvement of Americans aside. This God is so involved in American politics that he has chosen Trump as the rightful, I don't want to say crusade, the chosen one, that Donald Trump is the chosen one who should lead America into going forward to bring America back to the Lord, to deliver the elections, but whatever. In this worldview, the Democrats are effectively, and I don't mean effectively as in something that they're actually doing, I mean they're having success at counteracting the will of a god. Could you imagine that? Could you imagine? The Democrats are so nefarious, so powerful, so damn near politically omnipotent, such a boogeyman, that they are able to successfully defy the will of a deity. And that God has to deliver this country from the Democrats. Could you imagine that? Could you imagine that Democrats are such an opponent worthy enough to challenge God himself? But anyway, it's imagine they act like Republicans are the party of God. Like, you have Cornel West, who is prolifically religious. You have so many. We have Reverend Warnock. One of those races in Georgia is from Reverend Warnock. Reverend Warnock is a man of God, hence the name Reverend. If I was God, I would take his side. But hey, whatever. In these Georgia, if Jesus Christ, the man from the Bible, not the God that, not the shell of a vessel that Christians and modern day believers project their own politics onto. Let's just take a complete reading of the Bible and not selectively edit, be a salad bar philosopher to make the Bible fit whatever our tested, decrepit political philosophy is. Jesus Christ would be so vehemently opposed to the exact type of people like David Perdue and Kelly Loeffler that people say Jesus would be a communist. I don't know if I'd go that far, but Jesus would definitely not be on David Perdue's side. Kelly Loeffler is horrible in her own right, but David Perdue is just so outrageous that he didn't even show up to his debate with Brian Ossoff. Holy fuck. He didn't even show up to his debate with his opponent. The race is... I don't know if the race is that tight, but he's not even going to show up to the fight. Damn. Anyway, David Perdue, of all the trades, the stock trades that Congress has initiated, all the transactions that they've completed, all their Wall Street transactions, every trade, David Perdue is responsible for a third of those. Once he got briefed, the exclusive briefing that he as an elected official gets on coronavirus, he dumped so many different stocks and took positions in sectors of the economy that would benefit from COVID, like Pfizer. American Christianity is such a bastardized form. I'm not to Christianity's credit, but Americans believe the damnedest things. Sometimes, not all of them. Not all of them. There are plenty. Don't act like Republicans are the party of God. That Democrats are the ones that are just vehemently sinful. And no, this worldview is completely bunk. But imagine Democrats defying a God, and that God taking the side of the people who are just so evil. There's no such thing as a good Republican. I'm going to say it. There is no such thing as a good Republican. Voters, okay. Neither party is going to do anything for the voters, but of rank and file Republicans, people who are active in the party, there's no such thing as a good Republican. This entire election fraud nonsense is a ruse to engage in voter suppression. That's why voter fraud exists, because no voter fraud happens without voter. It doesn't. Voter fraud isn't real, and when it is real, it's Republicans. The only reason voter fraud is blown so completely out of proportion is so Republicans can engage in voter suppression, shutting down ballot boxes. Yeah, that's the party of Jesus Christ. That's the party of God. Deliver these races. Deliver us the Senate, and pray Trump gets a second term. Again, imagine Democrat. As I said, I try to get into the minds of these people to try and empathize. And imagine ascribing such damn near political omnipotence to the Democratic Party and just general amorphous term as the left that they defy successfully a god.
Intelligence.
Need to take a drink of water. I forgot what I said. I'm going to edit this out.
Races in Georgia. Oh, Father, state races. Would you give us a true vote? And oh, God, I personally ask from myself, Michelle Bachmann, Lord, would you allow Donald Trump to have a second term as president of the United States?
What can I say? The election's over and Joe Biden won. Anyway, moving on. I forgot what I said, but we're gonna have to say fuck it. But anyway, moving on. Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez has some new merch. It's pretty cool. I think the designs are nice and it's pretty well made. 100% cotton. I hate polyester. Fuck polyester. Whenever I can avoid polyester, I do. Cotton is king. Fuck polyester. But anyway, the hypocritical right is criticizing the price of the merch. It's too expensive, they say. Alexandria is a hypocrite. She's selling merch for high prices, yet she purports to be a proponent of the working class, the less fortunate, the impoverished. How can she charge such outrageous prices for merch when she also purports to tax the rich? She says tax the rich, but shouldn't this sweater be for rich people? No, that's ridiculous. I think everybody should have access to good clothes. Having a 100% cotton that isn't sweater that isn't made with slave labor shouldn't cost an arm and a leg. It shouldn't be a luxury that only the rich can afford. But anyway, I wanted to focus on this because it takes a philosophy, an approach to merchandise, to consumption, that I think that we all need to engage in and that we all need to support. If you look at the current paradigm of American consumption, it's rather poor. Most Americans have clothes and diets that are cheap and ineffective, and American goods are of poor quality compared to our competitors, namely China. China is the ascendant nation right now, and I believe that unless we course correct, China will eventually take the United States' place as the world's sole superpower. But hey, you can say that you can talk about military, but look, America doesn't really have the same economic output that China does. We don't make our own stuff. The stuff that we do make is bad. And I think that this sweatshirt represents the product design or the philosophy or the paradigm of consumption that America and American industry has to facilitate. If you look at American-made goods, they're not overly expensive, I'll give them that, but they're often very poor quality. The computers that I'm using to make this stream, all the parts come from China because American electronics suck. The capacitors die easily. The most of the processing power that we have, it's not nothing compared. It's just easier to have our electronics, and better to have our electronics come from somewhere else. The Apple iPhone, famously designed in California, but actually made in China with companies that have suicide nets to catch people because they make what, $3 a day. Again, the Apple iPhone, designed in California. Like, See, American product design, it's all marketing, no substance. That designed in California, produced in China, that part out loud. It really is descriptive of what happens in America, isn't it? So this tax the rich sweatshirt, we need more of this. It's made in the United States. Union printed. People this are probably paid well. Facilitates jobs, it facilitates growth, and it's probably going to last a long time. People think that climate change is it's the issue of our time, that it's our World War II. It's actually not. It's the new thing that we have to contend with. There is no cutting carbon emissions and then, oh, we'll all be grand. No, going forward until we have the technology to fundamentally control our biosphere, climate change is something that's going to stick with us. It requires massive mobilization. I do agree that this is our generation's reckoning. But going forward, tasteful consumption, building products that last, building them well, building them in a way that's sustainable, that promotes our own nation, being independent, like the masks. The COVID masks were notoriously problematic in the beginning. That's so much that Dr. Fauci lied so that people wouldn't use them, that they would have enough for doctors. This isn't a matter of economic growth. This isn't about capitalism. This is also a matter of national security. America has to become more independent. We are completely dependent on nations that are not only opposed to us, dangerous to us, and in competition to us. We are dependent on nations that, quite frankly, just aren't on our side. That's China. What they're doing to Uyghur Muslims is the biggest. I think they said the biggest concentration. They're concentration camps. I don't. What they're doing. I'm gonna edit this out. China is routinely responsible for human rights abuses within their own country, Tibet, and China is notoriously responsible for human rights abuses, Tibet, what they're doing in their own country with Uyghur Muslims. China is not a nation that we should be invested in, yet they wield so much disproportionate power over our intellectual property, and America is willing to bend the knee so much because America is also so dependent on China. Anyway, my point is, this sweater is not an element of hypocrisy. In fact, it embodies the very sort of consumption, the very sort of production that America needs to integrate more of. So, I'm surprised. I don't see a whole lot on the left covering this. France police security bill. Protests turn violent again. So, a quick refresher. A black man was beaten by the police, and later, excuse me, a bill was introduced, a proposed law, that would make police accountability more difficult to achieve. I believe the specifics of it was going to make it so that you couldn't legally film police officers. You would be doxxed for doxing police officers was going to be illegal. It would essentially extend the same protections to them. They wouldn't be treated like public servants. We have body cameras. You're allowed to film the police officer. If you take out a camera at a routine traffic stop, it's completely legal. It might infuriate the cop, but it's completely legal. You're allowed to film public servants. And the law that France introduced challenged that. Well, France rose up. And I think the saying I heard on the Majority Report, or maybe it was Mike Figueredo over at the Human Rights Report. In America, Americans are afraid of the government. In France, the government is afraid of the people. And I think France, not to pour gas on the fire, but Americans are so tolerant of injustice and tyranny that France, quite honestly, strives to fulfill all of the promises that America makes. When will there be a vaccine against police violence? One poster placard reads. So if you look at the American gun culture, the Second Amendment culture, I think it was one of the Japanese generals in World War II that famously said there's a rifle behind every blade of grass, and Erwin Rommel said that no, the United States was uninvadable because we had fish to our east and west, and because America is so fortified. But for such a nation that took a big game about freedom and liberty, that we're the home of the land of the land of the free, home of the brave, we're often very craven when it comes to state violence and in state sanctioned injustice. A lot of and it's easy to say why is America not doing what France is doing? Not to say that people are justifiably outraged, but I don't want people to burn down buildings. Anyway, why are people angry about the bill? Pose the criminal offense to publish images of on-duty officers with the intent to harm their physical or psychological integrity. Psychological integrity. What is it? It says offenders could face up to a year in prison and be fined 45,000 euros. No, if you're serving in the capacity of a public servant, you should be able to be filmed. It should be legal to film you, especially ignoring the context of police brutality. I think, as a general rule, if you're serving in this capacity, you should be filmed. But even with the and especially in the context of police brutality. Since then, 4 officers have been placed in criminal investigation. Members of the president. We know that doubt persists about it. We can never truly tolerate any reduction of press or freedom of images. Moving on, we have a rare instance of alleged election fraud that has taken place. Pro-Biden effort offered Native Americans $25 to $500 Visa gift cards and jewelry to vote. Okay, this looks shady. Of course, with most of Donald Trump's fraud claims and most of the Republicans' allegations do tend are dismissible even on a cursory level, but this one might require a little bit more scrutiny. Rudy Giuliani right now is basically getting random people off the street to make an affidavit about whatever, and then he basically goes off on a tangent. Election fraud could have happened, but most of the allegations don't really allege anything. They say election fraud could have happened, and the ones where say election fraud do happen usually completely bunk. Like the myth that dead people vote. The myth that dead people vote is propagated because so many people don't understand how the election process actually works, and that even if you get the ballot of a dead person and submitted, it would be rejected at the time it would be cast. But anyway, pro-Biden effort offered Native Americans $25 to $500 Visa gift cards and jewelry to vote. Now, this article was written by Paul Bedard. What did he tweet out about this? You guys are so pathetic. Trump will beat us by a lot. Maybe he'll open a MAGA church to keep the cult going. No, he's going to take over OAN. I don't see any claims explicitly that saying that this was a matter of election fraud. Does it? Now this article isn't presented with that much of a slant. But nonetheless, this article was written to fan the flames of the election fraud conspiracy. Now, I'll admit, at face value, this looks like electioneering. We have a pro-Biden effort, like some group. Maybe it's in the video here. We have the Biden-Harris bus. It looks like electioneering. Like you would be forgiven as the article is presented. You would be forgiven for coming away with the take that the Biden-Harris campaign gave incentive to a disproportionately Democratic voting demographic, to increase voter turnout in the state of Nevada, which, as we know, was one of the determining states in Biden's victory. People said that Nevada, it was Nevada that when Biden was at 264 electoral votes, and Nevada was the first to turn blue, Nevada was the state that was going to push Biden over and give him the victory. So Nevada, this is a heavyweight state. Well, anyway, at face value, this might be electioneering. Except the group that's responsible for pushing the pro-Biden effort isn't some bipartisan or third party. No. It is the Reno Sparks Indian Colony, a native reservation that under law is a sovereign nation. Now, thing about Native American reserves, on federal Indian reserves, however, only federal and tribal laws apply to members of the tribe. So, on these reserves, they don't necessarily have to abide by state laws. It's like a state in a state. Now, the election is a state-level affair. It's a state-level affair with federal consequences, I should say. To have this election on the state level, it's the state that has to curate, vet, and audit and ultimately offer accountability for any wrongdoing. Because the Native Americans are not susceptible to the state law unless Constitution permits, this isn't necessarily a matter of electioneering. So much and so that according to the Native American Voting Rights Act of 2019, it's even intended. In general, the Office for the Civil Rights Office of Justice Programs of the Department of Justice, referred to the section of the office, shall establish and administer in coordination with the Department of the Interior a Native American Voting Task Force grant program, through which the office shall provide financial assistance to eligible applicants to establish and operate a Native American Voting Task Force in each state with a federally recognized Indian tribe. Now, Reno Sparks Indian Colony is indeed federally recognized. Task Force Grant Program. Purpose: the Office of the Native American Voting Task Force Grant Program is to increase voter outreach, education, registration, turnout in the Native American communities. Now, you would be forgiven for applying the same casuistry as we do to normal states and normal elections, but in the case of reservations, some special considerations are offered by this by this bill, by this law, I should say. This is law. But anyway, this isn't illegal. In fact, here's another one. Here's another raffle intended to increase voter turnout. So, once again, an allegation meant to challenge the legitimacy of the election is completely bunk. This is not, even if it was, it's certainly not, even if it was, it's still not significant. They will never, ever concede that this election was valid and viable, because it's not meant to. And I'm kind of torn between the two opinions that maybe this is a paranoid, no, it's an authoritarian demagogue exploiting the paranoia of a vulnerable and what's the word I'm looking for? It's not primitive. Of a an underprivileged base, or is it just an attempt to funnel money into Donald Trump's future campaign or his bailout fund? Is he disingenuous or is he dangerous? That's what I'm trying. Well, he's dangerous either way. Is he disingenuous or emotional? Is that the word? Is he disingenuous or is he disingenuous or anyway? Is he disingenuous or totalitarian? Is he trying to maintain power or is he trying to leverage money to himself? What are the interests behind the campaign? Is it conspiracy or is it enrichment? Either way, I, I, I I'm privy to know. Does Donald Trump think that he's going to make it to a second term, or is that just a pipe dream he offers to his supporters as a way to cope, as an opium of the masses? Like, here's the where was the tweet? I closed out the tab. It was a tweet that said Donald Trump was going to open a church for all of his disassociated followers. Well, Fox News kicked him out. Fox News is no longer is going to be as hospitable to Trump's congregation, and so OAN is going to have to take that responsibility now, I presume. Anyway, that's what I would like to hear people's opinions on that. Is Donald Trump simply disingenuous, or is he totalitarian? Is he trying to enrich himself, or is he trying to stage a coup d'état to try and maintain power, even though he lost an election? Anyway, I think that's it.